Welcome to the EZCODE Projects Series Padlock video number 4. In this video, we'll fix the clasp length, add some bling, and add a combination to our padlock. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects Padlock Series videos. For those of you that have done so, let's begin. Open up VS Code, right? Add the padlock directory, right? Add folder. Mine is in projects, EZCODE. I'm going to select the padlock directly. There's our files. Open the view HTML file in the browser. Okay, we'll open the browser up. We'll go to File, Open File, and we're in Projects EZCODE Padlock. Source view HTML. There we go. Okay, I'm going to also open up the developer console on the right. Now, let's click and unlock, or click the unlock button. So we'll do that. Note that the clasp is too short and does not touch the lock. Let's lengthen the clasp height by 10%. So we'll go over here on the Elements tab. Go down to padlock clasp. Now we have a height right there. We can just type it in or just arrow up 55%. Okay, and we noted we did get a longer clasp here. Okay, so it's definitely touching now. But now the clasp is too long on both sides. So it's either too short or too long. Let's fix that by extending the clasp as we did and adding an overlay to cover the extra length. Type as I do, pause the video or slow down the speed when needed. In the view HTML file, let's go to that, view HTML file. Add a new div inside of the clasp div. Okay, so we're going to go, here's the clasp div. We're going to find right there in between the two opening and closing tags. We're going to open it up, put a div with a clasp or a class property of spacer. And all we need is the div, which we have right there. And in the style.css sheet, let's add the new spacer class as well as give 10% extra to the clasp height as we did in the browser. So before moving on, I'm going to save. I'm going to go to the style sheet now. We're going to look right here. We have the clasp. So let's go ahead and give 55% there. And since we're in the clasp, and that's where the spacer is, it's nested in there, we can add a nested class of spacer. And in that spacer, we have a few things going on. If you remember from the last video, we have a position of relative. We're going to set the top to 79%, and left we're going to go -13px. So we're positioning where the spacer is going to be, and then we're going to go background color of white, and then from there we'll give a height of 17px and a width, okay, of 13px. So looking at this, we can see at least the width, 13px, it does match the border width. So let's go, actually, we're going to save this up and let's go to the browser and we'll check out what we did. So we're going to refresh, okay, and we're going to unlock. And look, the clasp works. We got it long on one side and short on the other. But do we really? Let's take a look. So we have the clasp and we have that spacer on the inside. We can see it here. Let's change the color so we know what we're looking at. Just click red real quick. And we can see, you know what? Let's open up this body just a little bit. Remember over here, we can mess with the opacity of it. And here you can see what the red's doing. So what we're doing is we're putting a spacer on top of this piece, and by giving it a position of relative top 79%. Let's take a look what that means. So top 100% would be right after the clasp ending. So the top of it, just like normal, it would go kind of below the clasp normally. Well, we don't want to go there. We actually want to back it up a little bit. That's why we have 79%. And to get these numbers, I didn't just make them up. I came here and played around for a little while until it did what I wanted it to do. So we also know that the left is going to be negative 13 px. And let's just go to 0 and see what, oops. Where would left 0 go? So left 0, top 100% puts us right there. So knowing that we have position relative in here and knowing, what did we have here? Negative 13 px. We're covering just as much as we need to cover on this. And so we're setting the color to the same background color. And it gives the illusion that the lock is really open. So that's where these numbers came from. And to get them, this is how you do it. You nest things in there, come in the browser, find out what you want to do, and then plug them into your sheet. I'm just going to refresh to get this back to where it was. And let's go back to the unlock. All right, this clasp looks really good. In fact, what a good looking lock we've got here. Now let's add some cool bling to it. So in the view HTML, inside of the div with class body, okay, so let's go there real quick. And in the view HTML, we'll find the body, or at least the div with the class body. And we're going to open up this element and get inside of it. And here we're going to put another div with class of title. We're going to close it and then open it up. And inside of here, you can create whatever you'd like. Something short, so it's not bigger than the body, or else we're going to get some weird overlapping. So I'm going to put EZCODE, but you can put your name or whatever you'd like to do. If not, you don't want to think about it, just put in EZCODE or put in lock. And we're going to go ahead and save this here and go to our style.css sheet. And here we're going to go to the body class, and to the body class, actually we're going to do a display flex. If you remember that one, we've used that quite a bit already. And we're going to align items, which is a property of display flex, and we're going to justify content. And what this is doing is taking the X and Y axis, which differ if you're doing a row or column, but either way, with both of these on center, we'll center the item. So we're saying the content inside of the body, the body is now a display flex container, meaning that any items nested inside of it at the next level anyways, directly will be centered on the X and Y axis. And then if we keep going down here, we're just going to add the title, which is inside of the body tag, so we might as well nest the CSS as well in the body. And we're going to give it a padding. If you remember, we were doing 4 different items in many cases. And I mentioned before how, in this case, if there's 2, how does this apply to the element we're talking about? And if you remember the borders, if we have 2 properties here, we're going to be talking about the top and bottom will get this measurement, and the right and left will get this measurement. So this is just a quick way of saying, if we wanted to do padding left, look at that, VS Code is so helpful. Padding left, padding right, padding top. No, we just want to say something as quickly as possible. And this is a very common use case right here, is padding or margin, and we just use the top, bottom, left, and right. So we've given it padding. We're going to give it a background color. And this is very specific. I already came up with this number. And if you remember how we get colors, You can see it has some opacity on it because it's a larger hex than normal, than the 6 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see it's got an opacity of probably most likely 30%. So we're going to enter there, and we're going to give just a border radius of 15 px. And then let's save our work and refresh the browser, and we'll go over these a little bit more. So we already had the word on there, but here it is now. So in the beginning, before we had any type of display flex, let's take these away and see that it starts in the top left corner, and we're just going to get rid of the flex, and so it just treats this as a block item. We're not going to do border radius. You can see that we take that away, and there's the EZCODE and then the padding. So see, when we highlight that, you can see the green, that's the padding, and on the top and bottom, it's less than it is on the right and left. And so that's our 5px and our 10px. So if you ever forget, you just come in here and you can just type along. And if I added one more, it'll correspond directly to, let's give it that. And we'll look at it again, and you can see the bottom. So if I kept going and did all 4, then it would now correlate to the far left side as well. But right now the 10px is what's giving the left and right, and the 5px is now the top, and 9px is now the bottom. I just did that to show you the shorthand versions. You can play with it on your own time. So here we go. We have the 5 and 10px. Let's put the border color or border radius and background color back. And you know what? We'll just go over here and say refresh. So there's our bling. Our padlock is looking super cool now. So on turning this padlock into a combination lock, that is going to take the next steps in this video series. So let's build on our view HTML file and add some little input boxes. So we'll go back to VS Code. We'll go to our view HTML. And once again, we're going to be typing a bit. So if you need to, just slow down the video or pause it after I'm done typing, and you can fill in everything that you need to do. And just to mention, it's very important that you type these things out, because the more, just like handwriting, the more you do it, the more you'll understand and memorize it. So here we are. We are going to add a 4-digit combination. And so what we need are different elements. And we're going to put this right below the actions div. So inside of the view container, we can see that. And we're just going to drop down a line, give us some space, and we'll start typing. We have a div of class combination. And once we close that, we'll open it up, and we're going to put in an input. And an input looks like this. We have to say what type it is. In this case, we're going to start off here with a type number. We're going to give it a class of value. And we're also, there's another property on an input where we can give it a starting value. In this case, we're going to start the value with 0. And then just like the buttons where they have an on click, we also have an on input method. So let's try that one out. And we'll equal in what we're going to say with the on input is, once the value changes, please notify this function. Well, we don't have a function yet, so let's just put one in here. It'll be on the EZCODE module, and let's call it update combination. Okay, now we have one more thing to do, and just like here, just like this, we have to put the parentheses on it. And when we do that, what we want to do is pass something very special into this method or this function, and it's going to be a special word called this. Now this is going to give us, you guessed it, this, the actual input, which is what we want. We want a reference to that. Okay, now to close this, the input doesn't have a closing tag. We just close it once, and there are several elements that are like this. Input is one of them. Now the easiest way to continue here is the best way, copy and paste. So let's go ahead and copy it, and we're going to paste till we have 4 combinations. And now We're going to save the view HTML. And we're going to go to our style CSS. So let's go back there to our style CSS. We're going to add a combination now. So let's go look at here and see where we put our combination. So it's a sibling of actions and padlock in the view container. So we didn't start nesting in the view container because we have that isolated up here, which is fine. We don't have to nest if we don't want to. It's a newer feature of CSS. So we have a padlock. We don't want to be in that. We don't want to be in actions. Once again, let's look at this again. Padlock, actions, and combination. So we want to be right outside here, and we're going to do combination. Open it up, curly braces, and we're going to give a margin top. So that's a space that we're going to give at the top of 10px. So just like we did, or we didn't do for actions yet, but we'll look at doing that. So we have a margin top 10px for the combination. And inside of it, if you remember the inputs, we gave a class of value. And we'll open those up and we'll put a width. We want a width of this input. It's going to be 35px and a height of 45px. Okay, and something new, we're going to give a font size. How big do we want the letters or numbers to be? And we're going to say 25px. And then we're going to go give it a little bit of padding on the left side of 20px. And we're going to review these here in a second. Let's save our work. We'll go to the browser, refresh the browser. All right, now we can see our default value on each input. It's a 0 as we put on there. Let's see what happens when we move up or down. So if we go up, okay, great. Go down, yep. Looks like it can do something like that. So also what we can look at here is in the combination, we can see there's our margin. That's the orange part of that piece right there. And then we have each one of the inputs. And again, if we continue, we start to get some things we might not want to do. And this is continually going. We went past 10, now it's in 20s. You just can't see the letter because the arrows are covering it up. You can kind of see them there. So do we want our lock to go an infinite amount up or down? That's not normally how a combination padlock would work. It would be a 0 through 9 on each one of these. So we have too much in the values. And what other values could we expect to be put in here? So let's mess around with this a little bit, and we'll say, you know, what if I put letters? Well, they don't seem to go in there. I'm typing right now, it's doing nothing. What about a decimal? Oh, yeah, a decimal works. What if I did 1 point or 0.3? Yeah, that's it. I don't want decimals in there. And then what about backspacing? Can I delete all the numbers from a padlock with a combination? I can't get rid of a number. It's just 0 through 9. There's no 0 through 9 and a blank space. So that's a little difficult too. We want our lock to mimic the real world. So let's limit what the input can accept. Now, we already added the onInput method to our HTML with an update combination function. We have not created yet. Let's create it now. So in VS Code, in the code.js file, let's go ahead and make a new function. So we'll just go below our lock function, make a space, keep it clean. We'll give it a function of update combination. See if that's right. It is right. And we're going to pass in here. I'm just going to drop down. It's going to be, we're going to call it E. So if you remember, we were passing in something called this. And when it comes in, we're going to call it E. So just real quick to start this up, to get it working, we're going to console log, because let's console log to look at what is E. What are we looking at? And I'm going to say combination, because that's the name of our method. So we'll know, we'll see update combination, comma. Now I want to see the type of E value, comma. I want to see the actual e-value length, and I want to see the actual e-value here, and then just give us e. So we're going to look at several different things, and console log you can just keep adding in comma, comma, comma after each one. And if I wanted to, I could even add in more words here and then comma. And I could isolate that way. But I know how this is going to come out, and we'll explain it as we do it. There's one last thing we need to do because we're using our JavaScript module, and that's add the method to our return object. So we're just going to call it the same thing, which means we don't have to have the key value. We can just shortcut it and say update combination. I'm going to save. Let's save our work. And let's go to the browser. Let's refresh and open up the developer console. So in the developer console tab, well, we can't see anything yet. So we have to actually do something here to manipulate the cell. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add one value. And there we go. We console logged a lot of different things going on here. So notice the type of the input value, right? We're typing in a number, and yet it's telling us that's what we used type of for. We said, what's the type of e.value? It's telling us right here it's a string. Well, even though we specified in the input as a number in the HTML file, it's still a string. So that's interesting. We also know that the length property was 1. So we have 1 here, okay? And then the next thing was the value, which is actually 1. It's a bit confusing there, but I remember what we typed on there. So we had length first, and then we had the number. And then we just said, give me E. And E, as you can see, is this from the HTML. So let's do it one more time, and we'll see. You see how the value changed to 2, 3, 4. And let's go a little bit. You can see now the length changed to 2 because now there's 2 characters in this string. So that's interesting. And let's look at one more thing. We're going to backspace here, which triggers the method as well. In fact, at one point it said it's a string and it has length 0 and its value isn't shown there. And that happens when we see empty strings like this or like this. They'll show up, they just won't show up here. So we know it's a string of length 0 and it looks like that when it's coming in. All things we don't want. And then what about the decimal? Let's do that one. So to me, I would look at that and say, okay, it started off with 0, which is weird, even though I had a decimal in there. And then once I had a number, it said, yes, now you have a length of 2 with decimal 3. Again, this is problematic for us because now we have something in the cell and yet it says it's 0. So we can't put logic in there that says, is there something in there? Because in this case, we would say, no, there isn't. It's 0. It doesn't have anything. Yet visually, there would be something in the cell. So let's go ahead and we're going to add more logic to our update combination function. So let's go back to the code.js file. Okay, we're right here, and I'm just going to drop a semicolon there. And let's put in some logic here. So how about if e-value is greater than 9? So that means they went on the arrow buttons and they clicked it after 9. We should probably get 10. And we're going to say, open some curly braces here, then e-value is equal to 9. And then we'll break up a new line here, curly braces, for an else. So we say if else. Actually, let's make this here an else if, and we'll say if e-value is less than 0, then e-value equals 0. And the else if, we want to be very specific because we don't want to write over the e-value if it's correct. So we want to write over it if it's too high, and we want to write over it if it's too low. We don't want to write over it if it's within these values, as in less than 9 or above, 0 or above. So let's save our work. We'll go back to the browser. I'll refresh it here. Now move up and down on an input. So we'll pick our favorite first one here. We'll go up, 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 up. And here's our 9. Now what's going to happen if we go to 10? Oh, okay, so it stopped at 10. So let's try the other direction. We're going to go down, and we're at 0. Now we're going to go down to the negatives. Nope, we've stopped the negatives. So it does do as we expected. It does allow 0 through 9, and it does stop there. So I'm just going to get rid of some of these. And let's go back here and do it doesn't stop the deletion, and I can still do these numbers, which we don't want fractional numbers in here either. So what are we going to do? Padlock does not allow empty values or decimals. So let's go back to our code.js update combination function. So here we are, back here. What if we could check the changed value, and if it was not within the combination range of 0 through 9, then just reapply a previous value? To do that, we can add the data-value property to the input. Let's go back to the view HTML. And what we're going to do is we're just going to open a space right here, and we're going to type in a property called data hyphen. Now after the hyphen, we can put whatever verbiage we want, and it's going to be the hook that we use to get a hold of whatever we put as the value. So in this case, I'm going to use the word value again, but it could be butter. We could do butter equals, and we're just going to put a 0 there. So we have data values of 0. Now in the code, we would say, oh, give me your data property of butter, but that doesn't make much sense. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call it value. So I use nonsensical words like this to describe areas where you can put whatever you want. It's yours to do, where data hyphen is not. So we can add these to any HTML element and get them this way. And what this is going to be is the value. This will change as someone is active with the actual input. So I can't know what it used to be, but what we could do is we can go in here and say every time they change this, we can store the previous value here. So we always know what the previous was and what value it's going into. So that's pretty handy for many different reasons. So get a hold of the ideas we're doing here, and you'll be able to use those on your journey. Now, most HTML elements, of course, can accept the data property to hold values. And also, we were having a few issues using the input type text. So if you remember, it gave us some arrows automatically to use. And there are some properties that we could do to change the upper and lower bounds of what's accepted in the type number. But we're also getting the decimal, and it's not very friendly and easy to use that way. So what if, and there are many HTML elements to use. Many of them have their own shortcomings, e.g. the input type number is severely limited as to what it can do. And so we don't have much control over accepting a decimal. So let's change our input instead to type text and see what fortune type text brings to us. So again, there's many different types of inputs you could put on here, and we're just going to say type text. So once again, we've added data value 0 to each one of our inputs. We've changed all of them to type text, and we're going to save our HTML file. Now let's update the function in our code.js. In the update combination, we'll enter a new line here. Let's keep the console log and the if statements for now. And we're going to go over our first line using the input with type text. So now we have, we're going to do a const value, and we're going to take the e value, which is a string. And just like other types of strings, arrays, types of data objects in JavaScript, they have helper methods with them. And string, of course, has many helper methods. One of those is a very popular one used, replace. And replace takes 2 arguments. The first argument is a little bit complex. It could be a string, but we're going to use what's called a regular expression. And a regular expression, or regex, is going to be 2 forward slashes, and inside of those we're going to tell the regex, or regular expression, anything that is not a digit, and we're going to add the global tag or flag next to that, comma, and this is our second argument. So our first argument is the regular expression. This is the whole thing. Don't worry about knowing what this is. It takes time to learn the ins and outs of a programming language. Most programming languages have a regular expression type of operators that we can use to iterate over a string and change values inside of them. So in this case, we're just saying, hey, anything that's in this string that's not a digit, get rid of it. We're going to replace it with a blank string. And the second part of what we're going to do here is we're going to take a substring, because all I'm returning from the replace function is another string. So here's a string. We run this method, returns a string, so that means we can use another method that's built on a string to influence it once again. And we're going to take the substring -1, which is the last character in the string. And if I wanted to, I could continue manipulating the string with many more methods. We're not going to do that right now. In fact, what we're going to do is we'll take this piece and we'll go to the browser console. And we're going to make a string really quick. So we'll just say maybe that string we were talking about earlier. We'll just say const stg equals string 88a. I'm not going to make this a const right now because we might reassign this. So let's just leave it stg, just like this. And we have it in memory, we can see. Now we're going to say stg, and we're going to paste what we have on there. So real quick, in fact, let's just go back to the string we assigned, and we're just going to make a string literal here, and we're going to say 88a, bunch of letters, decimals, asterisks. We can see that everything's getting removed, and if I put some more numbers in there, they just all merge together. Now, if the last number was a 5, that's what happens with the substring. If we put the substring back on there and we took the -1 value of it, we're going to get the 5. So that's all we're doing with this complex regex that you might see here. So let's go back over there and just clear this off, refresh the browser. There we go. And so the e value comes in. It can come in any way it wants to. Decimals, pluses. You remember one of the problems we had with the number, with the input with type number, is it wouldn't give us the decimal until there was a number next to it. The text will. So the input with type text will get the decimal as it's typed. And we're going to assign whatever value comes out of this right here. So if the value has a bunch of letters and numbers, we're going to remove them, and then we're going to take the last one. Now from there, what we're going to do is we're going to do a different form of an if-else statement. This one's called a ternary operator, and what we're going to do is we're going to take e value, because we're going to reassign to it, and we're going to look at the value length. And value, remember, in this case is a string. So any string that has anything in it, whether it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, decimal, whatever it comes out of this thing, if there's something in it, it's going to have a length of 1 or more. If it's empty, just like this one is right here, it's going to be a 0. And we're not talking about the number 0 when we put the number string or the string 0 in here. We're talking about an empty string and an actual number 0. And in JavaScript, 0 is a false value. So anything more than 0 is going to be a true statement. So if it's true, then we put this question mark here, and the next thing that we put here is going to happen. It could be a function. It could be a value. In this case, it actually is the value, and that's what we're going to put in there. So if the string has any type of value in it, it's true, then just we're going to reassign the value back to itself. And if it's not, and here comes the else, then we're going to do e dot, and we're going to get that data attribute, if you remember. And remember, we could have called it data butter. This is where you would have put the butter, but we did end up calling it value. So quite a bit of work going on in these two lines of code. We take the string, we replace anything that's not a digit, and then we extract the last digit, if there is one. If there isn't, this is going to be an empty string. And then it's going to come here. It's going to say, hey, if it has a length, then it has a digit in it. We can be certain of that through here, through this logic. We know it's going to have a digit if it's true. And if that's true, just continue with the e value as it is. We're going to reassign it. And we're going to overwrite what it is already. But just in case it wasn't clean enough, we're going to clean it up. If it is 0, it doesn't have a length, then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data value that we had in this, if you want to call it like a storage locker. So if you remember, we started the data value just as we did the normal value. But if we type in the input 5 here, this is going to turn to 5, not here in the HTML, but in the runtime code. And data value is going to remain whatever it is, because the input really doesn't know anything about data value. It's just a passenger. So if we want that 0 to change, we have to do it ourselves. And that's what the second part of the next line is. So we're going to say, if there's e get attribute, then there probably is an e set attribute. And in this case, usually there's going to be 2 arguments. One is going to be what data property are you calling? Because I could have many on there. I could have data -1, data -2, data -3. I could store all kinds of things on there. We're going to specify, hey, it's data value, and we're going to change it to the newly assigned e value, which you can see directly above line 21. Whatever this value is going to get assigned, we're going to now add it because it's made it through this entire scenario. So we took the string and we got rid of anything that wasn't a digit. And then we took the last digit if there was one. So this can only be a number string, a single number string, or an empty string. And then we used like an if statement. So you could say value length. Let's take that. This is really what we're saying. If it has value length, then it's going to be value. Let's move that over. And here is just the end colon here. And else, if it's not this, if this isn't true, then we're going to get the e get attribute. So if we put this here, this is how you can look at this ternary here. It's just a one-liner. It makes it fast and easy. Once again, we read left to right, top to bottom. So now we can get rid of some information here. We can kind of clean up our things here. Let's get rid of those. And our function's cleaned up a little bit. And let's save our work. And it looks like we can now provide a fixed input to the padlock without extra characters or deletion. So let's see if that's true. We'll go back to the browser. And let's try the delete button first. Actually, let's refresh our browser, make sure that's doing it. And we'll go ahead and delete now. I can't delete, can't put in letters. Trying a decimal is not working. Special characters above the numbers. Up arrows, down arrows, I can move around, but that's okay. That's a normal input. So let's try a 3. Yep. And now let's try a 4. 9, 3. So this was the reason why we added that take the last substring. If we replace the digits in a way, if I hit 3 and then I hit 5 here, what the input is seeing is 3, 5. So I usually want the last one. So the first thing would have replaced any letters, which 3, 5 is digits, so they still would have been there. And if we would have taken the first one, then if I have a 3 and I hit a 5, it would go to 3 again, which doesn't make sense. So that's why we're taking the substring in this part. We're taking the last digit because the combination function is going to get up to 2 letters or 2 numbers at a time as we type like this in the same cell. So it would be 7, and then if I hit 8, the input would have provided 7, 8, and that's why we take the last one. We can't get the decimal. Everything seems to be working. So let's add a bit more finesse to our lock and unlock animation. So if you remember, we're going to unlock and lock, and it's a little jerky the way that it's going. So let's see if we can add something to that. I'll go back to the VS Code, and we're going to go to CSS this time, style.css. We're going to look at the clasp class, and here it is. And just right here at the bottom below the box sizing, we can put a transition of 0.5 seconds, and if the top is affected. So what we're saying to CSS is, watch this property. If this property changes, add a transition of 0.5 seconds to whatever the change is. So if it went from 0 px and it went to 2000, it's going to increment that within 0.5 seconds, which would be super quick to move that much. But we're only moving 10 px, so 0.5 seconds seems adequate. So let's go ahead and save our work here, and let's go back to the browser. And we're going to refresh the browser, and there's our lock. So let's try the unlock and then the lock and see what happens. There we go. It's a little more smooth transition, you can see, and the lock. And you can see, just if we wanted to play around with that a bit, we could inspect it, go to the clasp, see the transition, and instead, let's do a 2 second on the top. Now if we do lock, it's very slow. So you can see we can play with different types of transitions. 0.5 second seems adequate, so I'll just refresh it. Unlock, lock, there we are again. So note how the class, it moves a bit more slowly, creating a visual appealing awesomeness to our lock. Nice work, everyone. We fixed the clasp so that it matched a real lock clasp. We added a bit of bling to our lock, and we added an input form to allow for a combination. In the next video, we'll connect our input form to our Padlock open logic, so the lock will open when we input the correct combination. If you enjoyed this video, click like and then subscribe buttons to get notifications of new content. Thank you for exploring programming with me, and I'll see you in the next video.